All right, let's dive in. Today, we're not actually going to ask if God exists. Nope. Instead, we're tackling a much weirder question. Why do we spend so much time arguing about something that a lot of people claim is just a fantasy? We're going to explore why the God debate carries so much weight, even, and this is the key part, especially for those who say they don't believe.
I mean, this really is the central puzzle, isn't it? Think about it. We don't hold big scientific conferences on whether unicorns affect gravity. You're not going to see a primetime panel debating the social impact of leprechauns. So why God? Why do we dedicate so much intellectual energy, so many best-selling books, and sold-out debates to this one topic? The very act of arguing about it suggests that deep down, we think something incredibly important is at stake.
You know, we instinctively sort ideas into different mental bins. Some things, like unicorns, they get filed straight under fantasy. We just dismiss them and move on. But the idea of God, that demands serious, costly engagement, even from its biggest opponents. Our actions totally give the game away. They show that whether we admit it or not, we do not treat these two categories the same way at all.
And that brings us to the core concept for today, what's called the integrity tension. It's that really revealing gap between what someone says they believe and what their actions show they actually believe. You know, it's that spot where our words and our behavior just don't quite line up.
Okay, before we go any further, let's do a quick clarification on some terms that get mixed up all the time. Atheism isn't just one thing. It can be a simple lack of belief, or it can be a much stronger claim that God does not exist. Agnosticism, on the other hand, that's the view that we just don't know, or maybe that we can't know the answer. Keeping these two distinct is really key to the argument we're about to make.
So, the formal name for this kind of thing is a performative contradiction. It's when the very act of you making a statement proves that your statement is false. The perfect example? Texting someone, "I'm not on my phone right now." Your action completely blows up your words. So let's take that same logic and apply it to the God debate.
Look, if someone truly believes God is a nonsense category, like a square circle or something, the only consistent and logical response is to just ignore it, right? But when a prominent atheist invests years writing books, touring for debates, and building a whole platform to argue against God, their actions are sending a totally different message. They're screaming that this topic is incredibly important, and that is the integrity tension in action.
And here it is. This is the punchline. The moment you decide to step into the arena to seriously debate God, your actions have already conceded a crucial point. This question matters. You simply can't claim it's a fairy tale while your behavior treats it like one of the most significant questions a human being can ask.
So, okay, if this question clearly has so much weight, then where does that weight actually come from? Well, it turns out there are at least 3 foundational reasons that make this topic pretty much unavoidable, even for people who don't believe.
These 3 streams of inquiry are the metaphysical, the moral, and the pragmatic. You can think of them as these 3 powerful currents that just keep pulling us back to this one big question. So let's break them down one by one.
First up, the metaphysical foundation. This is all about the nature of reality itself. It touches on cosmology, that huge question of why there's something rather than nothing. It gets into the fine-tuning argument, which asks why our universe's laws of physics seem so perfectly dialed in for life to exist, and it includes teleology, the whole puzzle of why nature seems to have so much order and purpose. I mean, these are not small questions. They're at the very heart of modern physics and philosophy.
Second, the moral foundation. Okay, so if you believe that some things are truly objectively wrong, not just your opinion, but actually wrong, then you've got a tough question on your hands. Where does that morality come from? What's the ultimate source? Where do these universal oughts and ought-nots get their authority? That search for a solid grounding for objective morals constantly brings the God question right back into the conversation.
And third, there's the pragmatic foundation. The philosopher William James had this great framework. He said, some questions are forced, living, and momentous. And the God question? It fits perfectly. It's a forced choice. You have to live your life as if God exists or as if he doesn't. There's no middle ground in how you live. It's a living question. It genuinely grips billions of people and has shaped entire civilizations. And it is absolutely momentous. The answer has ultimate consequences for meaning, purpose, and hope. The stakes just don't get any higher.
Now, of course, this way of thinking has its critics. Any strong argument should be able to handle some tough questions. So, let's walk through some of the smartest and most common objections you'll hear.
This is a really common and honestly a very fair point. The idea is maybe this whole debate isn't about some deep metaphysical truth, Maybe it's just about pushing back against the very real influence of organized religion in our society.
But see, this is where the argument kind of turns back on itself. Because if a belief system is powerful enough to shape laws, cultures, and entire civilizations, well then the question of whether or not it's true becomes, by definition, momentous. So far from showing the topic is trivial, this objection actually proves it has enormous, undeniable weight.
Okay, here's another strong one. The motive for debating isn't intellectual curiosity, it's a practical desire to reduce the real-world harm that can be caused by religious belief. Another very fair point.
And yet, we run into this same inconsistency. People don't organize global campaigns to reduce the harm caused by belief in leprechauns, right? The very act of campaigning against religion's influence proves you are treating it as a uniquely powerful and significant force in the world, not just another bedtime story.
What about the arguments themselves? I mean, the science behind fine-tuning and the philosophy behind cosmology, they are far from settled. These are fields that are actively and fiercely debated among the experts.
And the reply here is just brilliant. Exactly. The fact that these fields are contested is precisely what makes them worthy of serious debate. We don't argue about things that are already settled or are obviously trivial. We argue about the live, complex, important issues. So the existence of the controversy itself proves the question is intellectually alive, not dead.
And finally, we get to the classic, the one you always hear, the burden of proof. The person making the extraordinary claim that God exists is the one who has to provide the evidence.
Now, while the burden of proof is a totally valid rule in a formal debate, it doesn't actually explain the behavior we're talking about. It fails to resolve that integrity tension. Think about it. If you truly believe a claim has zero evidence and it's just pure fantasy, the rational response isn't a lifelong costly engagement, it's disinterest. You just wouldn't care.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, when you pull all these different threads together, it really points toward a path of greater intellectual consistency, no matter what you happen to believe. It's all about aligning our actions with the things we claim to be true. It really all comes down to this clear and honest choice. If the topic of God is truly beneath us, if it's just nonsense on stilts, then the only consistent response is to just ignore it. But if it is worthy of our engagement, then our actions should show that. We should engage it honestly on the deep levels where it actually resides: the metaphysical, the moral, and the existential.
Ultimately, this whole explainer isn't about telling anyone what to believe. It's about inviting all of us to just look at the debate itself in a new light. By recognizing the inherent weight of the question, a weight that's revealed by our very own actions, maybe we can change not just what we argue about, but how we choose to engage in the first place.